Tennis has given me everything I can ever hope for and more. I can't say that I loved it, I don't know. A huge problem in Indian sport is that resources are so individual centric and not spread across a system. I got into Sydney and I was so happy that I just got in. I wasn't there to win. It's tougher to win a world championship than an Olympics, by the way. Okay? So nobody cared. Certain sports that come from certain areas.
Is that a mindset issue?
It is. It's a cultural issue. There is no way you can do anything in sport without your mind. Your body can be whatever. Really, that's why I say women will make much better administrators than men.
Hi everyone and welcome to our podcast Women in Sports powered by WordsWork and the Global Institute of Sports Business. Here we're going to dive into the careers and lives of some of the most wonderful women in sports, but not exactly sportswomen. The sports ecosystem is growing, and through the years I have come across some incredible women and their fascinating journeys involved in their day-to-day work. Be it business women, women in sports, as coaches, journalists and many more. We aim to throw light into their incredible journeys. In our first episode, we have someone who can easily be called an expert in sports development in India through her illustrious career in tennis, and now of course being the head of excellence and talent scouting for JSW Sports, we have Miss Manisha Malhotra with us. Manisha, thanks a lot for being with us today. I can't be more pleased than to have you kicking off our first episode of Women in Sport. The idea is to get to know the person behind the persona, which we've seen over, at least I've seen over the last decade plus. And I think from whatever I know, it's been an incredible journey and I'm really looking forward to learning more about you today. So I want to start with rewinding back to your playing days, your tennis days. And from what I hear, sports has been part of your system from a very, very early age. So what was it like growing up? When did you start playing? And how much does the environment count in terms of, whether it's your parents or your school, in terms of making you a personality who's so entrenched into sports?
Well, for me, it's been 100% that, and I've been fortunate enough to be born into a family that's very sports oriented. My grandmother was playing badminton until she was like 75, and was whatever club champion. And my grandmother and grandfather actually met on a tennis court, and so whenever they married in the 1910s or 20s, it was quite a scandal. So we've been around sport all our lives. We grew up in Bombay, going from one club to another, just playing. That's what we did. Luckily for us, there were no mobile phones and internet and whatever else. So that was what we did. And it was my dad was a tennis player. I think he played up to the national level or so. So I think he's the one who actually put the tennis racket in my hand, I don't know, at 4 and said, you have to play tennis. And I can't say that I loved it. I don't know. I don't remember. But I know that I was sporty in the sense I was athletic, but I started playing tennis and then at some point along the way got good at it.
Yeah.
And I think that's how my progression went. It was not that I fell in love with it and then got good at it. I got good at it and then fell in love with it. So that credit goes to my dad. I don't know how much he must have pushed me. It must not have been fun for him. But
I've heard this a lot about tennis players, and you obviously in this particular sport, you need to start really young. And a lot of it starts with the parent pushing you. Yeah. And in some athletes, they're grateful for it, and in quite a few, they're not as well. So
it can go both ways.
It can go both ways, right? Yeah. So for you, it went.
Luckily, it went right.
Way.
I mean, really, tennis has given me everything I can ever hope for and more. And it is a sport. It's one of the things in my life that I don't understand. It's probably the only sport that I haven't supported in my administrative career. And it really bothers me now when I'm nearing the end. I really feel like,
give back to the sport.
Yeah, so,
absolutely.
It has been a wonderful sport. It's been a sport that really kind of teaches you so much from a life perspective. And every sport does in that sense. It's not just tennis, but I was, now looking back, I was lucky enough to come from a very unfortunate tennis background. I didn't have enough, my parents were not rich enough to make me a champion. And at that time we had a huge struggle, and it definitely wasn't fun then, but it's the best thing that could have ever happened to me. We used to travel. I remember, because we couldn't afford to fly back and forth, we used to buy one round the world ticket from Australia in January when we were there, and use it until in October when we went back there, and then you just keep flying in one direction. So we go Australia, and then the States, play a little there, then go back, and then in the middle we had to buy one more side ticket, which we used to buy from Europe to go back. So yeah, like I became half a travel agent almost, because we didn't have internet, right? So you had to go from shop to shop to say, listen, where are your cheap tickets? And in Australia, you used to have the maximum flight center and this and that, and people used to go to the mall, and we also used to go to the mall, but we used to be sitting in all the travel agencies over there.
Oh God.
But it taught us a lot. I mean, there have been times when I've lost early in a tournament and I didn't have enough money to pay for the hotel. Stayed in overnight trains in Europe.
City to city.
Yeah, just, and okay, I was probably cursing myself at that time, but it is what it is, and it really taught me what an athlete goes through, and how we have to kind of really fight against the odds. You meet a lot of great people. You're traveling in a circuit where there are similar people with similar backgrounds and similar struggles. So it's really a question of on one side you're trying to beat them and cutthroat and all of that. On the other side, you still have to kind of, be with them and live with them and share rooms with them and eat with them. And so yeah, it's an interesting thing. It really teaches you in a way to learn how to look after yourself, and it's really sink or survive kind of situation. And so yeah, those were my tennis days. They weren't really very rosy and glamorous, but it was near the end. It was a lot of fun. And
yeah.
And when I got better, then we used to play bigger tournaments, and you can be in nicer places, and you had a little bit more leeway. But by no stretch of the imagination, I can say that I was rich playing tennis.
No, and I think that is where the challenge comes in many sports, not just tennis, where a lot of it tends to start depending upon how much you can spend on it, whether it's coming from the family or it's coming from elsewhere. And does that get frustrating at times where the capability exists, and probably not just with you, with other athletes as well, the capability exists, but it is so dependent on the kind of resources that are backing you as well?
Yeah, I mean, resources are definitely one inherent pillar of a successful sporting career. There's no way that anyone think. What happens is in India is that resources are so individual centric and not spread across a system. Whereas in the US and Britain and Australia, a system is funded and then it trickles down to players, and so it's much more efficiently spent. So it touches a lot more people. And that is inherently a huge problem in Indian sport, is that, you win a nationals, and if you're let's say if you're in the top 5 of India in any sport, you're well funded.
Yeah.
You're not hurting for money. But
so is there a big gap?
But how do you know? So then, how do you know the top 5? And what about the 7, 8, 9, 10? Maybe they're just not good right now, but how do you know that they may not be in the future? The ability is pretty close in a lot of scenarios.
So it's a fine line.
It's a very fine line, and I think that's what really we need to now look at. And from an administrative point of view, and if you really want to get into the technicals of sport, every high performance director or everybody working within Indian sport needs to start looking at that. We have no austerity when it comes to spending, right? I mean, even in my own organization, they're not going to bat an eyelid if I say, okay, I spent 2 crores on Neeraj Chopra. But am I allowed to spend 2 crores on Nishant Dev? No.
And that's where it might be needed as well.
And does he not need the money? Absolutely. So that's the whole point. And Nishant Dev is still a very bad example because he's already reached a certain level. But like an Olivia who may or may not make it. So that is not the way to do it. The way to do it is to spend 2 crores on a program that gives athletes every facility that they need. And yes, one of those facilities is traveling abroad and playing tournaments.
Yeah.
That's just one of them. But you still need countless other facilities.
Other opportunities, absolutely. And I think a lot of it is to do with you knowing this because you've been through it in your own way, in your own career. And you did reach that point where you did manage to go to the Asian Games, you went to the Olympics. Dialing back a bit, do you remember those moments clearly, and did they lead up in a certain way towards what you're doing now in terms of your mission to, make this a reality for other athletes as well?
Absolutely. I remember those moments extremely clearly. I mean, I definitely remember the moment when Mahesh missed the volley on top of the net to win the gold medal. I also remember the time when we just got cell phones and we couldn't afford to answer them, but we all had them. And, SMS at those times used to be free. and we used to just work on that. And Mahesh is frantically calling me on my mobile phone, that big Motorola thing that I don't know why I even had. I must have got it at some tournament somewhere. And I was in the middle of France playing club tennis in some god-forsaken village just to be able to make some money to travel the next few months. And he's calling me non-stop. And I'm like, why is he calling me? I don't want to talk to him. And then I'm getting so many of these funny phone calls. And finally my dad called, and he never calls. And
then you picked up.
Yeah, because when your parents call and they never call, and so I'm like, yeah. He's like, why aren't you answering your phone? I said, because I don't answer the phone. It was like whatever, how many ever rupees a minute. And he's like, have you spoken to Mahesh? And that's another question he never used to ask me. So I said, no. He said, call him right now. Okay. So then I called Mahesh and he's like, where are you? What are you doing? You got into the Olympics. Go right now. So that happened, it was like at 8 o'clock at night in Paris, in France. I was near Strasbourg somewhere, I still remember. I took the 4 a.m. I had a club match the next day, which I just abandoned. And I took the 4 a.m. train into Paris to be able to get a visa for Australia.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I remember all these kind of moments. I remember getting into Sydney. See, that's the whole thing. Like, I got into Sydney and I was so happy that I just got in. I wasn't there to win. I wasn't
there to be there.
So
right?
I was the whole. I told President Bach when I met him, I said, I am your embodiment of the Olympic movement, because I went to the Olympics to enjoy the Olympics, to enjoy to be the sports person, to be the person to trade those pins and to grasp the moment and spread love and Olympism all around the world. And that's what I was doing in the village, literally. I was not there to win anything.
You were the ambassador, basically.
So he was laughing when he was like, and then he's like, oh, and he was really sweet because he's like, oh, then you must not have got this and the certificate and this and that. And so he gave me a lot of memorabilia from Sydney, which I never got from wherever. So then cut to seeing people being successful and seeing teams behind them is really what actually got us all thinking, and really we wanted to give back. We were privileged. We understood we were privileged. The thing that really changed it for me, we were in Sydney and we were watching. We watched at that time Dinko Singh lose in the quarterfinals to a Korean, where he won the bout for a medal. That would have been a medal.
Yeah. And
we were all so disappointed, and we were driving back in the bus, and I had no clue about boxing. And I didn't even know whether he won or not, but whatever. He lost, so we were sitting in the bus. Then the guy, I don't know who was in the bus with us. I can't even remember the face of the person, and he was crying. He's a coach or a manager or one of those, and he was crying, and he's like, "This was a medal, and this is how it is, and it was all fixed, and they cheated, and we're going to put a protest. I'm going now early to the NOC mission office to see." And I'm like, that also happens? And then he was explaining to us how Koreans have bribed the judges.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, that also happens? I was so naive, I had no clue about life.
No, but tell me, you're talking about this whole Olympism and you were all for it. What does it take, or rather, why is the Olympics as big a deal as it is? And you've experienced it, so you know about it. And what does it take for an athlete to reach that level? What is it about the Olympics that makes it what it is? Over the years, it's been so many years.
See, over the years, the Olympics has branded itself in various sports to be the pinnacle of that sport.
Yeah.
So, as a tennis player, the Olympics were not a big deal. If you were asked me as a kid tennis player, okay, Manisha, would you rather win Wimbledon or win an Olympic gold? I would say Wimbledon, and 9 out of 10 win. But if you ask a water polo player, will you win an Olympic medal versus anything else in your life? He's not going to say anything else, or she's not going to say anything else.
Yeah.
So there were sports that were part of the Olympic movement that were not the glamour sports. They were not the fancy ones. And this was the boxing and wrestling and weightlifting. So it was a show of strength, which were all these combat sports and weightlifting, Then it was a show of speed, which was athletics and running, And then there was a show of skill.
Yeah.
Right? So that was the whole, how it was dreamt up, and they didn't even have a world championship. They just used to have, so then that was how this whole Pierre Coubertin's whole Olympic movement got brought up, because to use sport as a vehicle and platform to bring to light elite feats of strength, speed, skill. That was the whole point. So you bring in people who basically have really good physical attributes, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right?
Got it.
And then that manifested into a whole different movement altogether, and really for various sports. And if you look at I can name you just off the top of my head: rowing, canoeing, beach volleyball. Of course, boxing, wrestling, weightlifting are all fine, but there's if you go down the list of Olympic disciplines, most of them were there, and that was their only glory moment. So then that's what you aspired to be.
Yeah, largely a lot of athletics as well, right?
Athletics,
Yeah.
of course.
Athletics,
That was,
of course,
those were all the foundational sports: gymnastics, athletics, weightlifting, boxing, wrestling. So yeah, it'll come to me at some point. But whatever. So it started off with 6 or 8 sports, and that's all they had. And even in athletics, I think there were 10 events, or
Right.
little bit less than that. But what it has manifested into is obviously a lot of other sports wanting a slice of that platform. And I think that's amazing. I really do. I think that for an athlete to have a beacon that you can aim for, to have a goal that is so tangible, you can see it, you see people doing it,
And you work towards it accordingly.
and then you can work towards it.
Yeah.
So that is the easiest thing to work towards. And I think from just having that platform, like a world champion, for example, when Abhinav won the world championships, nobody cared.
How many people knew about it?
It's
right?
tougher to win a world championship than an Olympics, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Okay, so nobody cared, but
It took that Olympic medal for people to understand
That he's a
his
shooter.
excellence. Yeah, correct.
and that's what it does. And it's taken years and years. I mean, we have to understand that it's been 100 years since the Olympics existed. So
Correct. So
it
has
didn't
that
happen
legacy.
overnight.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, absolutely.
And kudos to the management, and kudos to them marketing it in a way. It's
And
also a business.
They've evolved it also over time, right?
That's what now it's become so much business oriented that you're losing those initial kind of what you started it for.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Now you're trying to do the TRPs and the popular sports and then the urban sports, and you're trying to reduce costs, and you're trying to do all these kind of various things. I mean, one of the biggest things to stay in an Olympics is how many people tune into that sport on TV. That's the fact.
So the popularity does obviously matter here as well. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yeah.
cricket doesn't check in any of the Olympic parameters, by the way, honestly. And I think Kampriani even said it in his address in the Congress when they wanted to add cricket. What got them thinking about cricket was Virat Kohli's 100 million followers, or
Yeah.
200 million, or how many ever he has.
Yeah, and that's what got them thinking about it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but tell me now, when you decided to then finally obviously move on from sport, active playing, and you thought of this idea of the Champions Trust, where did that pivot come from? What was that initial thought that was seeded with you?
So this is honestly Mahesh and my idea. It was an idea that Mahesh and I talked about, and we always wanted to do something for Indian sport. We didn't know what. And in some way in our discussions, and maybe this was him thinking because he's very good at structuralizing things, he came and said that, Manisha, imagine what a struggle we've been through. You know, why would we want other athletes to go to it? Imagine if we start up a fund and we'll have people investing into that fund, and you have a corpus of money, and you give it to these athletes, and you tell these athletes, you don't have to worry about anything but training. And we'll call it the Champions Trust, and we'll take care of everything end to end for them. And I thought that was a great idea. Now, he's a king at raising money. I am really not. Okay, so we were just chilling like that, and we were talking. And at that point, I'd even stopped playing tennis, and I was coaching a Russian girl. And I was at Wimbledon with her. She was playing, and I was coaching her. So we were on the practice courts. And this is now just after Athens, 2004. He was eating lunch in the players' lounge, and the Mittal family walked by.
At that point?
At that point. And then he said, why don't you join us for lunch? And they started joining him for lunch. And he then told them about this. They started talking about Athens and how it was so unfortunate because Mahesh and Leander at that point lost a bronze medal very closely. They were playing for the bronze, and whatever, Leander missed a swinging volley, but whatever. So they started talking about that. And they're like, oh, we were so sad because after you guys lost, there were no Indian athletes to cheer for. And so we ended up cheering for the Kazakh athletes because we have a steel plant there or something like that. As soon as they said that, this guy said, but we have a plan. We want to get Indian athletes to the Olympics and we want to give them that. And we would like funding and would you be interested or something like that. I don't know what he was. I wasn't there. But the next thing I know, he's chasing me on the practice court saying, quit this job. I want you to go right now to India. And I said, listen, I can't go right now to India. Luckily, my girl lost, not the day, but a couple of days later. And I literally took the next flight to India and he's like, get me research, pick the sports that you think could be good, pick what we can do, and we have to come back to London in a month and present. So that's essentially what it was. There was not so much science. It was me coming back to India and just getting on the phone and speaking to people and speaking to, honestly, the people who helped me the most were the journalists.
Yeah, they had all the insights.
And at that time, it was still like one journalist really did one sport, like Kamesh only did tennis.
Yeah.
It was still like that. So between Kanan and Rajaraman and Kamesh and all these KP Mohan and all these senior lot who are no longer there now other than Kamesh, but they are the ones who actually kind of shaped what I was thinking or what I thought could be good.
Yeah. So which were the sports that you chose and what was the logic behind that? What was the structure you were trying to create?
So what we chose at that point was because it was the first time any corporate was ever coming into Indian sport in the development of it. The idea was to choose something that we could be relatively good at quickly and somewhere where we were on the cusp of doing well and we just needed that little pivot of money. And you have to understand at that time, I think the size budget was 40 crores.
Compared to today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So nobody had money. They had money or they were not spending it on sport. There was no athletes other than the shooters who would get NSDF, which was the old brand, like Tops is a rebranded NSDF, and nobody knew about it. Only the Delhi people knew about it. Yeah. And so they used to sit over there. They used to have one Babu filling forms.
Limited to that lot, basically.
Yeah. So basically, 5 shooters used to get this fund, and nobody knew about it. It was not on the internet. I don't even know if Sai had a website. Whatever.
And this is back in. To be fair, it was also back in 2010, 11, 12, right?
No, this is now in 2005.
Oh, that long back then. Yeah.
And by 2010, it was a mayhem because of the Commonwealth. 2008 onwards, that Commonwealth Games mania, the floodgates opened for money into athletes.
But what was the success that you saw starting this and actually seeing it through? So one is that you have a thought which makes a lot of sense. The other one is then the ground reality of seeing it through, right?
Well, that's the exact point. And that's what I was getting to, is that was my completely naive thinking of Indian sport. I cannot tell you that I was any expert of any sport. I used to be one poor fledgling tennis player traveling around the world. You asked me anything about tennis, I knew it. But I had no clue about Indian sport. I never even lived in India. I used to be 8 months of the year out of India. I used to only see other Indian athletes in an Asian Games or a SAF Games or one of these games. We never even used to play the nationals at that time. So when I look back now and I'm like, really, I was delusional.
Little did you know at that point, yeah.
So I thought that this is the best job in the world. I'm the approving authority. I'm writing checks to people. I'm going to be like the power center of Indian sport. And really then I realized that's not what we needed. Yes, we needed money at that time. In 2005, we need money. In 2024, we do not need money. But in 2005, Indian athletes needed money. But what happened? Like, what is happening? I cannot say that it was a complete waste, because I'll tell you, while we gave money to individual athletes and it was not a system, and those athletes, some did really well, some didn't. But what it did do, and I don't think any amount of money can buy that, is given this present generation, whoever won in the Olympics 2008 and 12, has given this present generation a path ahead and the feeling that they believe they can win.
They can. They
So I cannot find you a coach who can make you believe that you can win. Eventually it's you.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in that.
So it kicked off that thought process,
Yes.
basically.
And that's, like today we are almost on our athletes are bordering on the level of delusion. Yeah.
So there's the other flip side to it.
So
as
there's a
well.
flip side to it,
Yeah.
but I would love that delusion versus an athlete like me who didn't believe they can win. And so that's what that did, is that, you know, when you have someone external backing you, that's not your parents, and you have someone saying, hey, I believe in you, and I'm putting basically money where my mouth is,
Yeah.
suddenly the kid says, wait a minute, maybe I can do it. Even if I didn't think I could, maybe I can. And that's what that did. Of course, it really helped Abhinav winning gold, Vijender winning bronze, then followed by, you know, the various wrestlers in 2012. And so it definitely, Sushil also again in 2008, but that definitely helped. And then it got to the point where athletes in India started to say, hey, you know, these sports we can do good in. And that's really essentially
It was a kickoff of a mindset
Yeah.
shift, right? So I think that was a great role that experience played. And then, of course, you came in with JSW Sports, and there was a larger vision at play. There was infrastructure at play, and there were other things coming in. What was the shift from what you started with the Champions Trust to where you are today with JSW Sports?
Well, to be honest with you, the only reason, because near the end of this whole, somewhere around 2016 or so, I really realized that funding individual athletes is going to get us nowhere.
Okay.
And it is not fair on a corporate to be lopped with investing huge amounts in one athlete where there's no guarantee of success. It's
That's
not
the
a good,
nature of sports.
and it's not a good return on investment. It eventually, even if you take a basket of 100 athletes, 3 will succeed. You end up spending, let's say, 300, you give 1 crore each, 300 crores, or 50 lakhs each, 150 crores for 3 athletes. Like, imagine what you can do if you actually did a system. And that's what JSW did. And that is honestly why, the only reason why I really work at JSW, because IIS and the whole concept that we're trying to get there, and the way we're trying to shape it, is what is the need and will be the need for the next 100 years. Creation of talent is something that every country or sport or generation of sport you're in, it's relevant.
Yeah.
It's something that you'll always need. And to be able to create a scale, now that's the problem now, is that we don't have a scale. Like, you need 50 such IISs. But still, you have to start with one.
Yeah.
And that is what we really, the need of the hour today is, because if you have a controlled environment to create athletes, you can then do so many of the ancillary things that eventually coaches learn better. You can have coaches who are being developed at the same time as the athlete. Those coaches eventually spread out. Those coaches you're hoping will create more athletes. It's a movement. Athletes learn how to work in a more holistic manner. You know, you are able to control different mindsets. You still lose a lot with two different societal pressures. You still, you know, discipline, drugs, whatever, marriage. But on the whole, you're able to create an athlete with a certain vision, which you can't do unless you have them in a controlled environment for a period of time.
So were you part of the whole inception of the idea of the Inspire Institute of Sport, and what was the thought?
Funnily enough,
behind it?
yes.
Yeah. So you started early when it was probably just...
Well, I actually went, when I was an MCT, again, this is Mahesh, he met Parth at the US Open, and Parth has a full story to this, but again, I got a call once and I was in Bombay, and he says, listen, I want you to go and meet Mr. Jindal and Parth and talk to them about your experience in sport and what you think Indian sport needs. And I actually went to them, and I wasn't working for them. I went to them and I said, listen, you know, Indian sport needs an institute, a world-class institute. Indian sport needs world-class coaches. Indian sport needs Indian coaches to be able to think world-class.
Yeah.
And that's the concept. And then I said, I can help you with different ideas or whatever. And then really Mustafa came on board, and we knew him for many years, and we kind of nominated him. But I went with Mustafa and Mahesh, with Parth and Mr. Jindal to IIS, and they said, oh, we're going to give you this piece of land. And it was just...
It was a piece of land at that point to where it is today.
Yeah.
But do you think that has really brought us a long way? And what's interesting is that, see, we always look at the people who are already at a certain level and are already in their journey towards some sort of international recognition. But I think what IIS is also doing is bringing in the talent at a very grassroots level. So that part of scouting is what you're doing, and how interesting or challenging is that to actually find the right pockets of potential talent and also convincing them and convincing their families to send them.
Well, that is challenging.
Yeah.
And inherently in India, we are a very vast country, but we have very few pockets. And that's the fact of it. So if you take a sport, for example, this wrestling, you know, you will have pockets within Haryana. Women's wrestling is in here, the Hisar, Rohtak belt. Men's wrestling is more in the Sonipat, this area. You know, if you want to go to Greco-Roman, then you go closer to Punjab, the Chandigarh, Haryana, Karnal, Panipat, like that. And there's a smattering of men's wrestling in Maharashtra between Kolhapur and like that. But this is a country of 1.6 billion people. Why are there only 5 pockets?
Yeah.
So that makes it very difficult. And that's what my challenge today is that we need to start reinventing the people and the sport in various parts of the country. And there is no scientific, this is from time immemorial. Vijay Amritraj, Ramesh Krishnan, all came from one club in Chennai. P.T. Usha and whoever the runners were there at that time, all came from that one village in Kerala.
Yeah.
So it's always been like this. There have been certain sports that come from certain areas. Even today, all these long jumpers in IIS are coming from one small village in Tamil Nadu, in near Madurai.
Correct.
Right? So why? Why can't a Karnataka guy jump? Why is it so?
Is that a mindset issue?
It is. It's a cultural issue. It's just in Karnataka, in that village, maybe they have only seen someone who has played handball or
We're
kho-kho.
also a very legacy-driven culture, right? Like whatever comes from a place is generation to generation, especially in wrestling, for example, I'm seeing that.
Yeah.
But internationally, I guess that's not the case. Internationally, there are systems
So
across
that's
sport,
internationally,
across
that's what's
states.
great is because it's in schools.
Yes.
And as soon as you have it in a school, it's a no-brainer. It doesn't matter where you are, right? And then eventually from a school system, you can easily sort out talent.
So the intent needs to be very clear, very solid, and I think it needs to be a collective that comes together. No one entity can solve for this problem that we're talking about, for sure.
Absolutely.
But on the other side of it, with whatever resources, and you've had a sizable touchwood resourcing that has come through in all of your efforts over the years, one is to get it, the other one is how to go about doing something with it. And what I've seen is you've done some crazy things for athletes. You've sent them for the right kind of rehab, you've sent them for the right kind of surgeries, you've sent them for the right kind of trainings. Some in India, many abroad in the places we had no idea had these kind of facilities. How do you get your knowledge together on what is right and what is the fix for a lot of athletes that you're solving for on a day-to-day basis?
Many people ask me this question, and I actually was giving a talk at the Women in Sport, some university who does a lot of women's sport kind of stuff out of Bangalore. And they asked me that. And anybody who listens to this podcast, I'm telling you, full disclaimer, do not follow how I know it. Because I know it through experience.
Okay.
I cannot teach it. That's my biggest problem. I had no formal learning in sport management and sport development. This is now a degree. You learn it. I've learned it over years and years of making very bad mistakes. And then because I was an athlete and because I've been so immersed in it, now inherently have a feeling for something.
Okay.
I cannot tell you that, oh, every decision I've made has been amazing. Of course it's not. I've made more mistakes than successes, there's no doubt. But I truly believe that in today's day and age for sport, you need to study it.
Yeah.
So all the people working for me now have to do a course, or they do it remotely, or even our athletes out of thing are now doing courses in different sport management platforms.
Correct.
But sport development, they're not able to find the right courses and right studies. So I have them. Every coach has to teach, even sit with my people and teach them their periodization plans, why they've decided certain periodizations, why they are deciding versus which mesocycle versus microcycle, and how you're coming up with the peak. They have to explain it to each and every person in layman's terms.
So it has to be studied now.
It has to be studied now. You can no longer do it where you say, chalo, theek hai, dekh lenge. we'll see.
And you've done it the hard way, right?
I've done
You've
it the hard
actually
way.
done
This
it
is not
through
a good way.
experience.
Yeah.
But now I think there are these options available.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people still don't understand that there is a huge aspect to a career in sports which may not necessarily being an athlete. And that is where, if you're passionate about it, or even if not, there's genuinely opportunity there from a consulting perspective, from a business management perspective, because it requires that now at this point in time. What you were talking about, people have intent, they don't know what direction to go in. So how important is it to build this ecosystem of a business of sports kind of an ecosystem where there are enough people who have studied it, who've trained and who've had that kind of knowledge to add value and pad up this sector?
It's the need of the hour.
Yeah.
And to have people from different backgrounds, not just an athletic background.
Yeah.
That's what you need. You cannot only rely. I mean, athletes are very hard-headed and they have a certain tunnel vision. All athletes. And we have inherent biases or not. And that's absolutely true.
And that's how they need to be also,
And
right?
it is a product of years and years of training. That's what you've trained for your whole life, and then suddenly you can't just say, okay, delete. Right? So that's okay. That's just how you are. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But you need other perspectives also, and you need other backgrounds, and you need other viewpoints. But what is completely important today is to have a clear vision for sport. And this is not a passion. Yes, of course. If you want to work in sport, Neha, this is also, like, you can also vouch for this. Yeah. If you want to work in sport and you don't have a passion for sport, there cannot be a more torturous profession.
Yeah.
Yeah. The amount of tears me and you have only cried together, right? Yeah. Like no other, I mean, and it's commensurate to the amount of joy. But if you didn't have an inherent passion for it, you would have quit.
Something that keeps you going. Right?
You would have quit. It's the most torturous thing.
So what keeps you going?
That it's in my blood. I cannot. I love the pain. It's masochistic. Okay, it is masochistic. Like lately now, this long jumper Jeswin, he jumped 8:42, which is a world lead last year. I can't get him to jump 7:42 1 year later, and it's an Olympic year. I'm consumed by that. I went to Germany to follow him just to see that. What is the problem? He's the fastest athlete in the world. Everybody and their brother saying best long jump in the world, best long jump in the world. The best long jump in the world can't really make the pit. Why?
So how much of it is a mindset thing, and how do you work on that with the athletes?
It's 99% is a mind. Okay? There is no way you can do anything in sport without your mind. Your body can be whatever. Body is the ability of your body is like many others.
And it's also finite.
It's a very finite thing, right? You can only run at a certain speed and your leap will be a certain speed and whatever. So that's all finite. Then there may be 100 other people who can do that. But what makes you better than them? And they're working just as hard as you because even they want to get there.
So it's a lot of mindset.
And the mind is it's a very, very difficult thing to crack. And we are trying, I try everything and you know that. I go very unconventional. I go conventional, I keep experimenting. The way to go about it is really very difficult to put a pinpoint on it because nobody has the correct answer. But really the way to go about it is just to give it time and to be patient enough to be able to stick by that athlete. And when everybody is telling me now, sack the coach, drop him, I have to be able to stick by that. And so that's where the thing comes in. So why should I stick by him and not 7 others?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. It's an inherent feeling.
Correct. And if I was to juxtapose this whole thought process into 2 of the most interesting experiences that I feel I want you to share about is, I mean, on one end you have Abhinav and then you have Neeraj, right? And you have closely observed both of them. And I just want to understand, A, how would you compare the 2 experiences, and B, what made you realize, and you realize this probably before many people, that they had it in them to win that Olympic medal?
So when you see an athlete, and Abhinav and Neeraj were 2 ends of my career.
That's why I want you to talk about
One was when I was a complete fledgling, and I'm learning as much as everybody else. And one is when I'm still very learning as much as everybody else, but I have a lot of years under my belt. So I've seen a lot. And they're very, very different athletes. They're very, very different human beings. They're very, very different. The nature of this sport is also very, very different.
Yeah.
But there's something that you can see, and it's called an X factor. And I've seen it in several athletes, not just these two. I've seen it in several athletes where you can clearly tell in a group that they are different from everyone else. And you always saw that. Let me give you a little perspective of being able to stick with the athlete. Abhinav won the world championship in 2006 in Croatia, I think it was, or Serbia, one of them. He didn't win. Then he mar ke won his quota in Bangkok and did not win a single competition for 2 years after that world championship to the Olympics. Did not win anything. He would come, I would go with him to different competitions to learn and see what's happening and all of that. And he would be like, he would come out of 60 people, he would come 40th. And he'd be like, yeah, but it's good. I wanted to kill him. And he's like, no, why are you getting impatient? It's good, it's fine. Much better today. And that, then I realized, really he's the one who actually taught it to me. An athlete who is so consumed by the process without any heed to the results will always get results.
Interesting. And in a very different situation, was that the case with Neeraj as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. So now Neeraj is a whole different athlete. Like he's exuberant, he's personable, he talks, he's flamboyant. He has always been. You knew him before now. Yeah. And for him, I remember I was in South Africa and I went to watch him compete just before his whole surgery situation and all. And when he qualified for the Olympics, and just the morning off, and we were chatting and having breakfast or whatever. I said, so how much do you think you'll throw? I mean, I didn't think he was going to get his Olympic qualification. I just said, how much do you think he told me then, मैं तो number तो देखता ही नहीं हूँ. जो भी number आए, बढ़िया throw लगेगा. I'm feeling good. मेरा body ठीक है. I'm feeling healthy. And I don't know, I can never know what distance it is. I don't even think of what distance I need to throw. I'm thinking about how I'm going to block and how I'm going to throw. The guy's 20 years old.
Yeah.
He was not, so see that clarity at that point. And then of course, then you see people who, there is not even a doubt if Klaus or whoever, Gabby at that point for Abhinav says you need to shoot 5,000 shots. There's not even a doubt that he will shoot 4,900 or 4,000 shots. He would shoot 5,500 if he loses count in the middle or whatever.
Yeah.
The same with Neeraj. If
so
Klaus,
it's all about the process.
Klaus will say, listen, you need to do this weight in snatch and then leaves. He won't say, acha, kal.
It'll be done.
It will be done. If not more, he'll say, acha, today I'm feeling good, let me try one more.
So it's a lot of clarity, it's a lot of self-discipline.
Yeah, it's a lot of self-confidence. And you can only get that self-confidence when you know that every single practice, you have given it 100%. And it's easy to say, but you can't. I mean, I work out. I went today morning, right? My coach had given me a plan.
Yeah.
And then there was near the end, I'm like, okay, I don't want to stretch, now forget it. And then I also tell myself, I'm like, listen, Neeraj would have stretched, right?
Yeah. That's the inspiration we also draw.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. And like, that is really what you see. And there are several such athletes. I'm not telling you that it's always just an Olympic gold medalist. We have a hurdler in IIS. She was a 110-meter hurdler. Again from Tamil Nadu, so the education is thing. I think she was even studying, maybe even trying to do MBBS and then didn't because she wanted to do hurdles, yeah? And then tripped on a hurdle and needed tore her ACL and whatever else. So I went up to her and said that, so I went up to her and I said, listen, she tore her ACL. And ACL now, for a hurdler, she's 26 years old. Like,
yeah.
Let's be realistic also. So I said, how are you? What's going on? Okay, it's also 110-meter hurdles. The chances of India winning gold medal. She said, it's okay, it's a setback. I wanted to go to Paris. But it's okay because I'm going to try and figure out how to get better. It's okay. I didn't tell her to do this. She enrolled herself in this sport management course. I didn't tell her to do it.
Okay.
Went and enrolled herself online in a biomechanics course. Okay. And just studied through her rehab.
And utilize that time.
Right?
Okay.
Now she's fine. She came up to me the other day and she said, listen, I've realized that I'm never going to get to this time that these people are saying to get a qualification. But what I have learned and what my testing is showing me, she went and tested herself, means you can run and time.
Yeah.
That with my speed and just a little bit of technique thing, I can be really good at long jump and maybe try.
And she
Will you
figured that.
support me?
Okay. Okay.
No, now that leads to a level of education. If she had not studied that biomechanics course, she probably wouldn't have realized that this is very easy to do. You know what I mean? So I said, she says, will you support me? I said, absolutely.
Yeah.
And she said, it's really okay. If I don't qualify, I'm still okay. If I don't qualify, I really want to come back and see how we can figure out ways to give back to the system and really create better athletes. This is somebody who's telling me this, who's 22, 23 years old or whatever, 26 years old.
And that's the kind of mindset.
So that's what I mean.
Yeah?
Like you see that they're a different human being.
Yeah.
So then, of course, I'm going to support her. And of course, I know she's probably not going to win an Olympic gold medal. But that doesn't mean she's less great than an Abhinav or a Neeraj or anyone.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of special things you look for. And these are the kind of, people always ask me, Manisha, why are you traveling so much? What are you looking at? Like, you're not a coach. What do you go see? This is what I'm trying to see, is that how an athlete is reacting to different situations is what makes my mind up for that athlete. You put him on a big stage. Is he shying away from it? Is he rising to the occasion? Is he, when he plays someone worse than him, is he nervous, tight, dominant, or is he, very blasé? Oh, I'll win this. If he's playing someone way better than him, is he rising to that occasion to really give it a fight, or really going into a shell and saying, I don't have a chance anyway? These are all the parameters that show you really a special athlete versus not.
And it's difficult because it's so intangible. Everything that you're talking about, it's a lot about gut feeling,
correct,
instinct, what you think will come through.
And so this is what this is what my experience has taught me, is these kind of things give me that gut feel, and I've really learned to trust my gut feel. And that's what it is. And
it's come through in many occasions.
It's come through, right? And it's not in a lot of occasions, and that's really okay.
Yeah.
And it is what it is, and I'm okay with that. But I really feel that we have to now learn to create people who are not. So now the new mindset and the new way of thinking is analytics, numbers, sports science, feed the data. Whatever
Use technology now, everything is kind of built.
So whatever it
towards,
spits out to you, it's choosing the person for you. But are they going to be able to measure this?
That
human
intangible
side
X
to it?
factor. Correct.
And so that's what I always say, is that we need a combination. And that's what, all the kids who are working with me, like right now, Rishabh is now in IIS. He's been there. He's going to be there for another 3 months. So this is what they need to learn, is that they have to learn the feeling of the things. It's so easy to learn the data part of it.
Yeah.
And you'll have enough and more experts to crunch numbers
And
for
that
you.
helps.
You need it. I'm not even saying no.
It's a great supplement, but not a replacement for that. The intangibles of it, right?
Yeah. And you have to have, as we say, we need a holistic athlete. We need holistic administrators. You need administrators who have empathy. You need administrators who can have that feeling. And really, that's why I say women will make much better administrators than men.
Why do you say that?
Because men do not have that level of empathy. They just don't. And it's not something, that's not a knock on them. Like, women are not as strong as men. Okay.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But then this is a feeling that I have seen happen over and over again with women coaches, with women who are running sports associations, with women. And in India, we've just not ever given that a try. I don't know why. Because I really think that will be a huge fillip for us, when you have people who can bring that little bit of emotion to it.
So you're actually drawing me to the reason I'm doing this in any case, because I want more women to get into the business of sport. And I think a lot of people are seeing it very laterally, saying, okay, I need to be interested in sports, or I need to be playing a sport to get into this. But there's so much more to it than that, right?
Not at all. I mean, absolutely. You don't need to be only into sports.
And honestly, if you look at the women, and there are over the years, including yourself, a handful of amazing women who worked in this journey and not necessarily only been an athlete. Of course, you've had both sides of it to you. But I think the industry needs more. And
yes.
how do we get there? A lot of it is to just start with the education and knowing that there's a career available
Right.
here. A long-term career. I've been here 20 years, you've been here longer.
Yeah.
And there's so much more work to be done, right?
Yeah, that, like, sometimes I have panic attacks because there's so much to do, but there's so little time.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if realistically, I'm 46, 47 now this year. Like, how many more years can I do this?
Yeah.
Let's say another 40 years. That's not enough.
Still not enough, yeah.
That's really not enough, and that really, I really start to panic, and that's why you said, okay, that's when I start to like run from one place to the other, and but it's just my dream to see a vehicle for women, and really it is, and I think that really we should think about doing something where it's completely like an incubator for women,
Yeah.
and where we can also then place them in a place, where between us, all of us, we can find enough places to kind of get them that job at the end, because there are a lot of really good women coming out of sport, and we cannot only rely on hope and happenstance that it'll happen. No, we hope that women run federations, we hope that women, so we just have to do it, and we can do it, why not?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we've learned collectively over the years is that if you get up and get down to it and you know what you're talking about, I don't think anything can stop you from making that bit of a difference. It may be 1% or a speck in the entire universe, but you've done your bit.
Yeah, and honestly, like, if you're competent enough,
Yeah.
it is maybe a little bit harder if you're a woman, but I don't know. It's really in your own mind, and this is what we were talking about before. Like, it is a little lonely because you don't have other women peers, but other than that, I don't see what the problem is. Like, I'm not so exceptional that someone else can't do it, or so like.
Yeah, I think honestly, through whatever careers we all have had, I don't think it's about wearing that label of man or woman. It's about the fact that we need more people in this ecosystem who know what they're doing, who have the right intent, who have the right education, and then are equipped enough to make that difference in this entire system. So I think you've started the process. Hopefully we'll be able to continue it as well. But thanks a lot for doing this.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Manisha. At least I got a lot of insights from her on what this industry really needs. And what we both agreed to is we definitely need more women in sports. So here's to finding more women who find their careers and find their paths in sports. I hope you enjoyed this episode. There's many more to come.